no matter where you advertise to, it costs the same amount of money. Whether I'm advertising to first-time home buyers or I'm advertising to people who are at the average price point, or like you said, the luxury price, it all really costs the same. Good morning. Welcome to another Motivational Monday. Real Estate First Friday.
Gosh, are you still on Monday?
I'm all over the place. I'm a couple of days ahead or 5 days behind, one of the two. In case you're joining for the very first time, which is plausible, my name is Matthew Hodge, Executive Vice President here at LPT. I'm joined by Fermin, my co-EVP, who is sitting right here to my right. And we have guest speaker Michael LaFido we're going to bring on here in just a second. You may have saw him at FallCon talking about the price point step up, owner of the LUXE designation, and also teaches a ton of luxury classes for us. So he's going to be joining us today. But before we jump into that, how was your week, man?
Oh, the week has been very much plugged into the wall charger. I'm trying to recharge my batteries from last week. Yeah. And, you know, it's definitely been a whirlwind, but it's great to feel like I'm back to maybe 80%. I would call it. I think this weekend I'll click over to 100% to start next week fresh. But it was definitely a week worth of recuperating. Yeah, for sure. But it was an amazing event last week. I mean, we had such a great time. It's always amazing to be in community with all of our agents and, you know, reflecting back on it, feeling blessed of this community that we have built here at LPT Realty. Yeah. I mean, the amount of abundance, knowledge sharing, the lack of silos and everybody working together, regardless of downline and upline, regardless of state, regardless of team affiliation, like everyone's just so willing to see each other grow inside of this community. And oftentimes, I mean, it's teams and groups and agents who are in the same localized markets. So in theory, you should be competitors, right, to each other. And that's like not at issue. Like we're all here to grow together. We're one LPT, we're one family. And it's just being in that environment, being there at FallCon 3.5 years later, like really sitting back and feeling truly blessed at the community that we've built. And we couldn't do it with each and every one of you guys, without each and every one of you guys. So we do thank you for all of that, guys.
That's definitely right. To your point, the environment there is very unique. And we've obviously been to tons of conferences and, you know, from different vendors, like let's say Realtor.com or Zillow putting on, like we've been to tons and tons of different conferences. It is unique in the sense that there's a genuine desire to see the LPT ecosystem stay open and people win. And there's not this uncomfortableness where people are like, hey, I'm not really going to tell you what I'm doing because that makes you, you know, a competitor against me, and that kind of like slits my own throat. You know, that kind of goes away, and it's genuine people opening up their playbook and saying, hey, when I tried what you're talking about, here's what happened to me. Maybe it works for you, but don't step in that pothole. Here's how I got around it, you know, and that's just super unique. So let's go ahead and jump into the content, because we are going to be talking about stepping up your price point. And our special guest is going to be Michael LaFido. We're going to bring him on here in a second. He was on stage at FallCon talking about that specific thing. And what I want to make sure is that there's a clear distinction that when we talk about stepping up your price point, it doesn't necessarily mean going directly into luxury. Maybe it does, but there's all these people who try to tell you like, hey, you can go from average price point to $10 million sales overnight just by doing this. And in my opinion, very unlikely, at least to do it consistently. It takes repetition. It takes you saying, hey, I'm going to go from 300,000 to 500,000. I'm going to go from 500,000 to 750, 800. Like you continue to have these step ups. And the further you go up that ladder, the more fact finding that person is usually going to do to find out what your resume is. At the 300, 400, 500 average price point, maybe that doesn't happen quite as frequently, although it could. Really, when you get to those higher price points, they definitely want to see, hey, what level of expertise? Who have you done this before? Let me see your track record. That starts to become more alive, which is why it's important to have this track record of you consistently stepping up your price point. And so we're going to talk about that today. Again, it's not necessarily going to be aimed just at luxury. It's just going to be about the concept. And the reason why we talk about this is because, you know, let's say you've got the ability, your max capacity or your max desire to do 10 transactions a year. Well, once you do those 10 transactions, you're at that capacity. Then how could you make more money if you chose to do that? Well, the only way then to do that is one, try to increase your percentage at the current price point. Like, hey, pay me 3.5% or 4%, or increase your price point, at the same thing that you could be charging right now, the 2.5, or 3. And so that's really what we're going to be talking through today, so that it unlocks that capacity. Because as you guys know, we are prepping for the boom that is to come, where we are going to see transactions unlock, and the people who are in best position for that period of time are going to win at the highest level. So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring in Michael LaFido. Hey, Michael, good morning. How are you?
Morning, gentlemen. How we doing?
Oh man,
Good,
doing
man.
great, doing great. Good to see you again. We had an opportunity to hang out at FallCon, and I'm not sure if you were there. There was one night that I think it was Friday night, the last night there, and that lobby bar was packed. It was about 12:30, and that thing was roaring. And so we brought in like 300. Don't judge us, but it was Taco Bell. It was like the only thing we could get, but it saved that group, because I'm telling you what, we would have been down probably about 200 people come Saturday morning.
And I'll personally admit, I think it was like 4 years or 5 years since I last had Taco Bell, and that story inspired my family to want to go out last night and get Taco Bell.
Oh, God.
So
it was the worst. I haven't eaten Taco Bell since a while, but it did save me that night.
Yeah.
I will tell you. Anyways, we have gone completely off topic. So welcome to the show, man. So excited to be with you. I know you're joining from Chicago. I know while you were at FallCon, you had a historic closing for your area. And so real quick, do you want to walk us through that before we jump in?
Sure. Yeah. Last week I had a big closing, 5.3 million in my market. That's a big deal, right? It was in Oak Brook, Illinois, about 20 miles west of downtown, and we represented the seller and had a multiple offer situation. Typically, about 5 million, you might get a couple showings a month, and we had 14 in 2 weeks and multiple offers, and went above asking. So seller was happy, and that's a great thing about having a team and systems in place. The closing occurred literally when I was traveling down to Orlando for FallCon.
Yeah, awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time. I know you had a super busy schedule and had to cut out Friday, but you were able to speak on Thursday and, kind of share your knowledge. And so real quick, when we're talking about price points and stepping up your price point, what does that mean to you? Because I know that you're the owner of the LUXE designation. You have tons of books that you've written, best-selling authors, and you're talking about key principles of servicing higher levels of clients. What does that mean when we say step up your price point? Is that just luxury, or is it a path to luxury built on skill sets kind of all along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a path, right? And so a couple months ago, the Mega Lotto was up to $1.5 billion. And I think two winners won it, one in Missouri, one in Texas. But, if that person who won that money, their financial advisor would tell them to diversify their earnings, right? Have some long-term investments, short-terms, have some liquidity, some high risk, some low risk. Well, real estate is no different. So many agents, they focus on a certain niche or a certain price point, a certain community. And stepping up your price point, Matt, could simply be just diversifying their portfolio of homes they represent. So if we were to look back at, if we did an exercise here for this group, and you look back at last year in 2024, all the homes that you sold, and then you also did the same and calculated all the homes you've sold so far in 2025, chances are those homes would fall into 5 buckets. You have entry-level homes or starter properties. You have average price point would be the second bucket. And again, you can figure out the average price point in your market through a local title company, a real estate board, your MLS. So you have 5 buckets. You have starter or entry level bucket number 1. Bucket number 2 is average. And that's where most agents really focus on, starter and average. And so stepping up your price point could just be simple adding the third bucket, which is high end, which is 2 times your average sale price in your market. If you just add a couple high end transactions, you could go from 300,000 average sale price to 340, and that would be a 10, 15%. You can go all the way up to 360, and that could be a 20% raise, or 390, 30%. So again, you mentioned it in the beginning, you're not necessarily talking about going from 500,000 to 5 million, although that would be great. We're talking realistic ways to step up your price point. So bucket 3 is high end. I call luxury bucket 4, and that's 3 times the average sale price. And then bucket 5 is what we call ultra luxury, and that's 10 times your average sale price. So if an agent, Matt, looks back at what they sold in 2024 and just places all of their transactions into those 5 buckets, and then compared it to 2025, you're seeing a pattern. Are you increasing your average sale price, staying stable, or lowering. Well, as we know, last year we had the least number of transactions since 1995, about 4.7 million homes sold across the U.S. This year, we're predicting about 4.8, so still really low. Next year, they're predicting many more. And so what can an agent do when there's less transactions to go around? Well, if they can increase their average sale price, if they can step up their price point, you can hit those income goals that you've had. And I call that working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you can think about it from two different ways, right? If transactions slow down and you've got actionable items to then, increase your price point, you can keep your income the same. Or on the other side, if the market starts to get busy and transactions expand and you're saying, hey, I'm at capacity, I can't do any more transactions, then at that point, the only way to make more money is then, of course, to then increase your price point. And so what we want to talk through today are what are some of those things that you can do to actually start increasing that. So let's say we're gonna work in 20% increments. So if I'm at 300,000 right now is where I'm at, I'm gonna look at how can I consistently get to 360,000. That would give you, let's say you're making $100,000 a year, that 20% increase would now make you $120,000 a year. So it really does make quite a big difference, even though the number on the transaction is really not quite changing all that much. And so, one of the things that I learned earlier on is that no matter where you advertise to, it costs the same amount of money. Whether I'm advertising to first-time home buyers or I'm advertising to people who are at the average price point, or like you said, the luxury price, it all really costs the same. What changes now in the response that we get from the consumer is how I'm positioned and what my credibility is. So if I'm advertising to ultra high-end luxury and I have no ultra high-end luxury sales, I'm ultimately going to waste my money. If I am, at 300,000, I'm advertising now to 360 to 400,000, I likely have a much better chance of that sticking because it's already an area where I'm pretty close. And so that's what we want people to understand. There are purposeful things that you can do to just increase it 60, 80,000 per transaction, and that makes a meaningful difference. So what would you say some of those starting points are to go from, let's say, 300 to 360, which I think is a very, very great example, very reasonable?
First off, we all have limiting beliefs. So we got to make sure that we believe that we can sell in those areas, right? So real estate agents have been taught to stay in your lane and sell your neighborhood, sell your marketplace. And again, there's credibility there, but to step out of your comfort zone, sometimes you might have to go to the other side of town or different neighborhoods that are in those price points, right, Matt? So one of the things I tell agents is to grow your knowledge, your confidence will grow. And so grow your knowledge, go to some broker open houses, go to some public open houses in those neighborhoods that are maybe the stepped up price point, right? And you'll realize, you know what, man, between my LPT training and the boxes and the branded materials, like these agents, you might say to yourself, what if they can do it, I can do it. They don't have good collateral. They don't know anything about the house. They didn't position the home. We all know the agents sometimes out there that take MLS photos with their phone, and it's their BlackBerry phone from 15 years ago. It's granular, right? It's not high quality. So the big thing is grow your knowledge. That would be number one. But going to where those price points are right. So whether it be broker open houses, public open houses, maybe joining a chamber of commerce that services maybe the stepped up price point areas. And then you'll build relationships, because it's all about relationships. As you know, real estate, you have to grow your network, right? If you grow your network, your net worth will grow. So build relationships maybe in those price points that you want to serve.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So, where a strategy that we really like, if you're saying, hey, I have $0 really, like I'm just going to attack this strategy with sweat equity. You can go to an open house, like you said, or someone who's got a listing and say, hey, can I do an open house here? I'm going to then bring in this high quality print material. I'm going to do this open house stuff. I'm going to use the LPT power tools to, really make it pop. That's going to be great for the seller. It's going to be great for the listing agent who's now, utilizing you as a way to promote the home. But then more importantly, you are then now going to interface with people who are taking the time to, one, either be in that, to go to the open house, or two, you have an opportunity to now door knock that area and say, hey, I'm doing an open house next door. We typically have an X amount of traction. Can I maybe, give you my information in case anyone parks in front of your yard? I just want to let you know that, you can reach out to me. Or tell me the reason why you love this neighborhood. Would love to be able to talk to prospective buyers on, some of the special things about it. And my point is that it gives you this conversation starter point for you to talk to people in the neighborhood who also have homes at that price point. And that's no different than you having a house already for sale in a $300,000 price point and you going to someone else and replicating that same exact efforts at 360 or 450,000. It's just putting you in front of those people. So with that being said, I want to make sure that we're kind of infusing listing power tools all the way through, because we have packages that support from that price point all the way up to, where we've got $14 and $15 million listings inside the ecosystem, where they're using the luxury collection Diamond Black, where, it's property specific magazines. And obviously it doesn't make sense to do that for every particular listing, but we have the ability to support you all the way through. And so it's really about plugging in those tools and showing up differently than other agents. Yeah.
One of the announcements that we made at FallCon was transitioning the listing collections to the Step Up collection, where now it's to really help the agent engrave in that, mindset of stepping up their price points. Because to Michael's point, oftentimes we do have that self-limiting belief, like, hey, I've been living in this space for so long, I don't think I can handle it that far. But the thing is, these incremental steps, as you've mentioned, Hodge, make a drastic impact, and it doesn't really change the dynamic with the interaction. You just need to have the confidences as you're walking in there to position yourself appropriately. And the Step Up collection, I can't wait till the final product is, fully launched, but it's going to be an amazing tool to help you, not only position you to sell the house, which is typically, the first step, right? Us as agents, what do we go in there to focus on doing? Hey, I want to sell the property. Well, what's level 2? Now, not only do I want to sell the property, but I want to sell my brand. And then what's level 3? I want to sell the property, I want to sell my brand, and I also want to sell my reputation. And once you can accomplish that trifecta, that's like the Step Up formula. And that's where the Step Up collections will help you fulfill that trifecta of the Step Up formula.
that was some tongue words. You got to that
that's
pretty
a
well.
lot of tongue twist, but you're exactly right. That was well said. So the open houses, we have people watching on different budgets, right? And so you hit the nail on the head. Something on a very low or $0 budget is leveraging somebody else's open houses and with LPT print collateral, door knocking, right? We know people. I'm hosting an open house tomorrow. Do I love hosting open houses on Saturdays? I'd much rather watch college football, but it's at a $2.2 million listing, and I know that post August 17th of 2024, the dual agency, we're going to see more and more dual agencies, right? Because buyers don't need to have a buyer agency agreement to go to public open houses. So I'm doing more open houses than I have before, probably in the last year and a half than I have the previous 5 years combined, right? So now that happens to be my listing, but those that are watching this, you can leverage other people's listings with their permission, of course. So you'll grow your knowledge, you'll get more opportunities, right? People go to open houses for one of 3 reasons. We all know nosy neighbors, but we have homeowners that are thinking about selling and they're sizing up the competition. So again, dress the part, look the part. That's an audition. That's an interview, whether you think it is or not. And then the third reason, of course, is buyers. And a lot of those buyers have to sell. So listings are the name of the game. They attract opportunities. Just yesterday, I have a $1.5 million listing. We had a showing. It got canceled. The buyer's agent canceled at the last minute. She goes, I apologize. The buyer wouldn't sign the buyer agency agreement. Guess what? 20 minutes later, half hour later, that buyer called me and she goes, oh, are you the listing agent? She goes, yeah. She goes, I wanted to see this home. I didn't really feel comfortable with the agent. She didn't seem experienced. And I don't know where it's going to go. But again, listings and open houses are like magnets. You attract more opportunities. You have cold opportunities. Those are people that don't know you, like you, and trust you yet. And then, of course, you have warm opportunities in your database, in your sphere.
That's interesting that you kind of bring it that way, right? Because you're talking about how you're interfacing with the consumer. So you're basically saying, hey, here's how people know me. One, they either already know who I am, they know what I do, they like me, they trust me. Lewis likes me pretty good. I actually helped him buy a house. That's that interaction.
You helped me buy my first house.
I did, actually. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that, but I really did. And then, there's the people, like you said, who you're now borrowing the credibility of maybe someone else's listing you're getting from them, and you need to interface with them a little bit differently. Both are, of course, very effective. Now, one thing that I want to kind of just take some time and walk you through some psychology when I was going through these price point jump ups. I'm going to give you some of the wording that I was using as I started. So when I was a big geo farmer. I would mail a lot to a specific community, sometimes 1 to 2 times per month. And that was either going to be a market update or something that was happening. And then I would do additional mailings when I just listed something, when it went pending, and when it sold. So I was constantly had mailers in their inbox. Initially, I started by saying, hey, I'm your neighbor. I would love to sell your property. Help me pick my next neighbor. That was what I used initially to get into my very first neighborhood. And then I would send out market stats. So it was about me being local to the community. That's what really worked. Then I started getting 1 or 2 listings, and then I was able to transition to being like, hey, number 1 agent on the market right now. I think at the time there was like maybe 4 or 5 listings. I had like 2 of them active. And I said, hey, I'm the number 1 listing agent right now because I had the majority of the listings in the community. And then that kind of propelled it where I got some more. And eventually I got to like 80% market share. And that price point was, I think maybe the most expensive home might have been like 500,000, and some of them were like 380ish, 309, like pretty tight range. And so after I took over that community, I then went to the community across the street, which was a slightly higher price point. They started around 600,000 or 700,000, and I used the credibility of my previous neighborhood to say, hey, I'm the number 1 agent in this neighborhood right now. We've got people who are looking in your area if you're interested. And so I use the credibility of this first neighborhood to jump into the second one. And so I would just piggyback my success off of one community to the next. And I just kept picking the next neighbor. Okay, this one has a little bit higher price point and maybe 20 minutes away. Then I'll say, hey, number 1 agent and so, blah, blah, blah. I've got X amount of buyers. We have people looking in your area. And so I just kept doing that over and over and over again. But you literally can just start within your own community by door knocking. Like, you don't even have to have a mailing budget. I was very nervous to set that budget aside, but I did because RP guided me on what to do. And I set a year's worth of budget aside, and I was super nervous. So I got 6 months in, I wasn't getting any traction. But ultimately, I'm just sharing with you my journey because, you can take that path and say, well, here's how it would make sense for me. I may be willing to do a budget. I may not. I may want to substitute mailers by physically walking around and door knocking. That may be the best way for me to approach it. That's really up to you to decide. But the methodology on how you go from one community to the next, and you use that price point of one area to justify that, your ability to be at the next, is really important to understand.
You are exactly right. And the one thing that I even add to that is, if you're a newer agent watching, of course, you can't leverage your sales because you don't have any, right? So leverage other LPT agents' sales, right? So we're a community, so literally we have 200 plus people on here. And if I put define team, we'd get 200 different answers. So you could even kind of spin it a little bit. Don't be untruthful, but you could say, hey, listen, I haven't sold any in this area, but a team member has, or someone at my group has. So you can leverage success from other LPT agents until you've had those transactions under your own belt.
That's a great point. Again, it is a brokerage level. So you could say, if you did notice that there's another LPT sale in the community, like, hey, our brokerage has represented either a seller or a buyer, and that is absolutely truthful. You are lending that credibility from a previous LPT agent who may have sold there, but it is still a truthful statement. And then again, of course, all these things, you always want to ask permission, right? Like, you don't want to take photos of someone else's listing and then start utilizing in your advertisement. Like, don't do anything that's going to get you in trouble. We're certainly not saying to do anything underhanded, but we are just giving you the tactics and the instruments that you can use to start creating these things, of course, in the appropriate way. So if you're using someone else's listing, of course, ask for permission. Don't steal people's photos. We're certainly not suggesting any of those things.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier real quick, we had the big transaction. And if somebody said to me, hey, a fellow LPT agent here locally said, hey, Mike, great job. I'd love to post about it and say, hey, look at, fellow team member, fellow LPT agent just had this big sale. I would bless that. I'd be like, yeah, no problem. Right. So those are other ways. You just get their okay, give them credit. And that's one way you can stay top of mind awareness to people.
That's right. Okay, so we're going to boil it down to this kind of real quick. We're going to create a quick summary of what we've talked about today. If you are at an average price point right now, let's say of 300, wherever it is, or you're not controlling your price point at all, you're just, hey, I'm getting the business. They were looking for 500,000. I sold them there. The next person was 300,000, so I sold them there. And I'm not controlling that at all. My recommendation would be to you that if you get to a price point that you like, let's say you do come across the buyer or the listing that's 500,000, overwhelmingly effort is what's going to make you stay at that price point. So you may say, hey, I sold a house in this community. I represented the buyer. I maybe got them from a Google PPC lead, or who knows where you got them from. They fell out of the sky, but they were at a price point that I want to be at, and they purchased in this neighborhood. I'm now going to let that community know that I just brought a buyer to that community. And if they are thinking about selling, to please contact me, because I represent buyers in the community, which is true because you just did. And so you're just creating that momentum to start being visible to that group of people based on your performance. Now, let's say you don't have a sale there, but you can leverage someone else's listing. It's a great way to do an open house, and you supplement that open house with your open house power pack and all those, buyer guide material, all the things that we offer to make you show up differently than anyone else. And then use that time to go talk to the surrounding neighbors, to, interface with the buyers who are coming through. And that's another way for you to start securing transactions at that price point. And then lastly, as you continue to step up to each price point, you're always going to overspend to establish someplace. When I was establishing a new neighborhood, I would overmail, I would do bigger houses than what were needed. I was just so visible because I wanted to make sure that I showed up differently than anybody else. And what I mean by that is that I wasn't always doing things that were just focused on selling the house, although that is a byproduct. I was doing things to making sure that people knew I was selling the house. And that's just another layer of that game.
Yeah, I definitely love this subject. It actually reminds me of a conversation that I had last week with an agent where we were talking about, hey, like I broke through my glass ceiling that was like creating friction on my ability to grow inside of real estate. And I'm kind of at a loss. Like, I don't know what my next goal should be. And I think hearing this subject matter, like, really helps us realize that there's so many goals that we can accomplish inside of real estate. One of those goals being stepping up your price point. Some of us may have the goals of transitioning from selling houses to selling a brand to selling your reputation. Some of us may have goals with, targeting a geo-targeted neighborhood and having more of that market share inside of that neighborhood. Like, there's so many avenues of goals that we can create for ourselves, which is always encouraged if we're looking to grow inside of this business. It's creating those goals, creating a target. And this is truthfully one that's very amazing that can really help you grow with very little change in price point. Like, as you said, it doesn't take a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just having the confidences to go out there and do it.
That's right. That's right. Well, Michael, we appreciate you joining us today, taking your time. I know that you're always super busy, and we appreciate the knowledge. And, Michael also does teach once per month for LPT on luxury collections and stepping up your price point, which is as we're kind of calling that now. And so make sure you tune in. If this is interesting for you want to have more exposure to it, we'll be teaching that in, I think, about next 2 weeks or so is when he's scheduled to teach again. So we're definitely looking forward to that. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
You too. Last thing we've got for you real quick, for those who do not know, Sunday is actually Robert Palmer's birthday. I don't think he's on here today.
No, he's not. He's plugged in and hibernating too.
Okay, yeah. He just got back last night. So Sunday is his birthday. So just to let you know, if you have a photo with him or if you are at FallCon, we would love the opportunity, or we would love for you to just post and wish him happy birthday, and, post your FallCon photos or any photo that you have with him. That'd be so great. It will be this Sunday is his birthday. We, of course, will be with you on Motivational Monday and give you a quick reminder, but we are just letting this group know, find a photo with Robert. Make sure you give him a happy birthday this Sunday. I know he will very much appreciate the LPT family love and support. With that being said, have a blessed and prosperous weekend, and we'll see you this Monday for Motivational Monday. Have a great week.